Let's take a deep breath together. And exhale the weight we've been carrying quietly, silently, invisibly. Because sometimes the biggest transformation in your life doesn't come with fireworks or a grand declaration. It begins in a whisper, in that still, sacred moment where something deep inside you softly says, "No more." Not in anger, not in rebellion, but with a kind of clarity that only comes when you've had enough. No more shrinking yourself just to fit into places that were never meant for you. No more apologizing for your truth just to keep the peace. No more abandoning who you are just to be accepted by people who only ever loved your mask. It doesn't always come as an earth-shattering realization. Sometimes it begins in small, quiet acts. You say no for the first time, and your whole body trembles like you've done something wrong. You set a boundary, and someone pulls away. You walk away from a connection that once felt like home, and it breaks your heart. But you breathe, and you stay with yourself. And that is the beginning of your becoming. Carl Jung called this individuation, not becoming someone new, but finally coming back to who you were before the world told you who to be. It's not defiance, it's remembrance. You were never meant to be a mirror for someone else's expectations. You were meant to be a whole, luminous soul, unfiltered, alive, awake. But for too long, you played small. You said yes when your whole being whispered no. You overgave when you were already empty. You tried to understand others while feeling completely unseen yourself. And you told yourself that was love, that it was kindness, that it was compassion. But deep down, you knew it was fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being too much. Fear of being not enough. Until one day, the cost of betraying yourself becomes heavier than the cost of disappointing others. And so, you choose yourself, not with a loud announcement, not to prove a point, but quietly, courageously. You begin, you don't harden. You clarify. You don't become selfish. You become sovereign. You don't stop loving. You start including yourself in that love. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you've always been. The moment you begin choosing yourself, you don't lose your light. You finally begin to shine. And yes, it feels strange at first. Saying no, taking up space, speaking your truth without filtering it through someone else's comfort. You were trained not to do this. Trained to be likable, easy, accommodating. But something inside you has shifted. You no longer want to be loved for who you pretend to be. You want to be seen, for all of you. Even if that means some people will turn away. Jung said we all wear a persona, a mask we create to survive in the world. But over time, that mask starts to suffocate us. And one day, your soul begins to rebel. But it doesn't rebel with fire. It rebels with clarity. It sounds like a quiet voice rising in your chest saying, "I don't need permission to be who I am anymore." You stop apologizing for your emotions. You stop dimming your joy to keep others comfortable. You stop seeking validation for what your soul already knows. You don't stop caring. You just start caring about yourself too. You honor your time, your energy, your space, not as luxuries, but as sacred rights. And the more you choose yourself, the more you realize you were never too much. They were simply not ready for the truth you carried. You were never asking for too much. You were simply surrounded by those who benefited from your silence. And now, you're done whispering your worth. You're done contorting yourself into versions that feel safe for others. Because your life doesn't need a permission slip anymore. It needs presence. It needs truth. It needs the real, full, radiant you. And here's the part that stings. At first, you think they'll stay. The people who claim to love you, you think they'll be happy to see you growing, blossoming. But then, some pull away. Not because you changed too much, but because you finally stopped pretending. Jung said, when we reclaim the self, we break the unconscious contracts we made with others. The silent agreements that said, "I'll stay small if it keeps you close. I'll stay quiet so you won't leave." When you stop honouring those contracts, some people feel betrayed. Not because you wronged them, but because they only knew how to love the version of you that played by their rules. And now, you've outgrown those rules. You no longer laugh when it's not funny. You no longer say, "I'm fine," when you're breaking inside. You no longer overextend yourself for people who can't even meet you halfway. And so they say, "You've changed." And you have. You've changed into someone who no longer negotiates their truth just to be loved. And yes, it hurts. Watching people drift. Letting go of what once felt like everything. But sometimes, what we called home was a cage in disguise. Now you are choosing freedom. You're learning to love without self-abandonment, to connect without performing, to exist without asking, "Is this version of me acceptable to you?" Because the real you, your essence, your heart, your soul, doesn't need to be approved. It just needs to breathe. So when people leave after you choose yourself, let them. They're not rejecting you. They're grieving the mask you no longer wear. And what comes next will meet you in your wholeness, not just the pieces that kept others comfortable. You used to wait for signs, wait for someone to say, "Yes, it's safe to be you now." But something has shifted. You no longer wait. You listen to that sacred voice within you, to your intuition, to the ancient knowing that's been guiding you home all along. And yes, others may ask, what changed? Why now? And you'll smile. Because the answer is simple. You did. You finally remembered who you are. And you chose yourself. If this message stirred something in your heart, if it put words to what you've been quietly going through, let it be known. In the comments, write, "Today, I choose myself." Let it be your declaration, your turning point, your truth. And if you're walking this path, if you want to feel seen, understood, and supported through your awakening and individuation, subscribe to this channel. Because here, you don't have to explain your soul. You just get to be. Remember, choosing yourself isn't the end. It's the beginning of everything.